Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, JArrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson. Little echo. I don't know if you can hear the echo, but I've shifted over a monumental shift, a paradigm shift at the My World Studios. I'm all of about 8 to 10 feet over, so some folks may notice a little office clutter, a little new scenery, but all good. I'm fired up today, Connie. Super excited about this topic. We're going to go back into lockdown 2009. Man, I'm going to plant a few Easter eggs on you, Connie, and have a little fun. But before we get to that, we can kibitz a bit. What a pay-per-view. Got a huge weekend I'm super excited about. Headed into kind of my old stomping grounds, but bringing somebody new with me. So I'll give you back the reins. But Conrad, I'm fired up. Good workout this morning. Good meal. The queen is in a fantastic mood. What a meal she cooked me already. So all good, pal. How you? How's a little chilly this weekend? Have you been out on the water yet?
Nah, 59 degrees.
Yeah.
Didn't get out there. But my parents were down at the beach this weekend, celebrated big 44 years of marriage. Shout out to Larry and Deborah for a happy anniversary. And shout out to you, man, making your way south of the border. Triple Mania right around the corner. You were doing a little press last week and called in, and we actually got to see you inside the stadium with Parker and Sottenham. Man, that's quite a crew behind you. You bringing a lot of artillery to Mexico with you, huh?
Yes, I am, Connie. And before we get into this, I do want to give a shout out to Larry and Deborah, folks that listen to this and may listen to other podcasts, whether it be Mr. Shabani, JR, we could go down Bruce. Maybe you started from day one, maybe even go back to his father-in-law podcast. But if you love Conrad, if you hate Conrad, if you're somewhere in between, then I will say you can lay a lot of it on Larry and Deborah, at least the good stuff. I'll say that. They are great folks. They are the salt of the earth. I cannot say enough good things about them. But Conrad, I look at, I'll just kind of say my family tree, and there's a divorce and it's rampant with divorce. But when I look at a couple like you, your mom and dad, and the ups and downs, and life ain't always easy. And, I know a little bit about the story, but good folks. And I am tickled to death, 44 years. So I do want to say, love those folks, all sincerity, man. That's a milestone. It is an important day. And I hope they had a great time at the beach and maybe some good weather. So how about that?
Yeah, man, they had all that. And I'm hoping you guys have some good weather south of the border this weekend. It's been a while since you've wrestled in AAA. When's the last time you wrestled down there?
Oh gosh, it was here is a little inside baseball, pardon the pun, and we're going to be at the Monterey Baseball Stadium. The last time I was there was 2 years ago in Monterey Baseball Stadium, which was just kind of a unique deal. It is, if you remember correctly, the year 2022, I started off in
GCW,
Game Changer Wrestling. I did a little dip in NWA as a special referee. I did AAA. I appeared at the baseball stadium, did an in-ring segment with the Queen, and the Latin Lover was there, and Vampiro, and things got salty. They got real salty, and then they even got even more saltier backstage. But now, not long after that, I went back to the WWE, and then we did that little thing called Ric Flair's Last Match. And then by the end of the year is Full Gear. Me and Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh and Sanjay take it on Darby Allin and Sting. So 2022 is quite the year. But no, that is the last time I was there. And now to be coming back, all this came down the pike pretty quick. And to have the opportunity, it's really cool. And we talked a little bit about last week. We've put together, and I say we collectively, an 8-man. We're an 8-man, so we put together a team of 4: Satnam Singh, Parker Boudreaux, and then when you get the next 2 guys that I've known a long time, QT Marshall, and QT is probably been in the ring at the school and learning the ropes with Sutton, maybe more than anybody. And then Sam Adonis, who I've always, and you two have been a huge fan of. The guy can just flat out go. Highly entertaining, but the team put together, and I'll just say in Mexico, they like to refer to me as the king of the mountain. And so the king is returning. Ray is returning to the baseball stadium on Triple Mania. What an incredible card it has put together. Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler, taking on Del Rio for the vacant Mega Championships. Vikingo out because of injury, so they vacated the title, and Vampiro is doing his last match in Monterey, and we could go all the way through it, but I'll get social media and get it to the ad-free team and get it for everybody. We'll get that link out, but it's going to be it's really cool to go back down there. Been going down there and working with those guys for 20 years now, so pretty cool. And Monterey is always a fun city to go to. Excited about that, pal.
Well, I'm excited for you, man. I had such a blast at Triple Mania a couple of years ago. My first one was October of 2022, and it won't be my last. If you've never seen one of these, you need to, especially if you're a wrestling junkie like Jeff and I, and you just can't get enough. Man, Lucha Libre, there's nothing like it. Be sure to check it out. Triple Mania this weekend on pay-per-view. I assume this one's on Triller?
This Saturday. It is. That's what I'm saying. I will be, we'll post a link, folks. Triller with English commentary. But yeah, they have several years ago, they went to a trilogy format. It used to be Triple Mania every year, anywhere between August and October, kind of their dates. And there was so many factors that went into it. Now they have, they basically have the 3 stages of Triple Mania, which I think the branding, and it's turned out very, very well for them. They have Monterey kicks off this time of year. Then they'll have a Tijuana date, and then they'll end up back in Mexico City in the fall. That's the one that you went to. It was a truly monumental day for so many reasons. Probably at the top of that list is when Tennessee laid an ass whooping to your Roll Tide on that, what do we call it? The 3rd Saturday in October. I
don't even know if you're saying English words right now. It doesn't make sense. It sounds like Fantasyland. You're talking about.
Get a one shot of Conrad. Do you mind? The Alabama took an ass whooping.
When was this? When did Alabama lose? I don't recall. Now I know you're not talking about basketball.
Back when Saban was there. Back when, my bad. I know that's a touchy. Back when Saban was there. That's all good. It's okay. Probably back when Chris Park actually still believed that Joe Burrow was a NFL quarterback. God bless him.
Did you see Chris Park posed on the WrestleMania ramp with all the agents behind him doing their best Charlie's Angels? It was fantastic.
It was a Kodak moment. That ages me, but yeah, it was definitely a Kodak moment.
What's funny is, you know, you spent a lot of time with the real life Chris Park. I'm mostly familiar with the character Abyss.
Oh,
so whenever because I didn't spend a lot of time with real life Chris walking around without the mask. So whenever I see him without the mask, I always kind of wish he had the mask.
Oh, yes.
And because it's just like, that's the way I imagine him. Even when I'm like, he's group texting us and just shitting all over us, I assume he's sitting there in a recliner wearing that mask. I know that's stupid, but it's just more fun, the visual in my head. And the idea that he was in a suit, but still wearing the mask just would have tickled me. So I'm gonna need Dave Silva or Chris McDonald or somebody. Can we just throw the Abyss mask on Chris Park in front of the WrestleMania set? Because Abyss should have had his damn WrestleMania moment too.
I love it. Conrad, have you, we'll dive into a little wrestling situation, because yes, I have spent obviously a lot more time with the real Chris Park,
right?
Than I have with,
look, that Abyss, imagine an Abyss mask on that. Because look, you see, I mean, the other fellows, they're doing full wrestling mode, and then here he is, like it's Olin Mills Day, it's picture day at school. But everybody else is having fun. It's like, no, man, Abyss it up, like twist those, you know, hit me with that chicken move.
He could always turn the head like the monster would do.
Yes.
Conrad,
my God.
Yeah, I have spent exponentially more time with the real Chris Park.
Yes.
In my house, out maybe having an adult beverage out back. He almost
wait. What's Chris Park's go-to adult beverage? Do you recall?
He's a beer guy.
Okay.
Yeah. One night downtown, we got into some shots, and I kid you not, he may get upset at me, but it was still daylight. It's the summer, but it was still daylight. Conrad, the length of one of those long bars, he took off running. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what reason, but he took off running and then really didn't slow down, but kind of mid stride. I mean, I'm talking 15-yard ball, the length of one of those, it's a long on Broadway. They're narrow bars down there. Not a lot of frontage of it. Anyway, he took off running and just kind of mid stride, Connie. I mean, as a good professional would do, he just kind of tucked and rolled, did a forward roll, came right back up to his feet. It was a beautiful sight to see. That was after a couple of shots, but he's a beer guy. He is a lot of fun. I've had so much fun with that guy through the years. But back to my I guess you could say my observation. You said you only can imagine the abyss. The first time I ever really got to spend time with handsome Jimmy Valiant, it was like I was talking to two different individuals, because when Abyss got into Abyss mode, just what you're saying, you picture him, it was an extension of his personality. He wasn't playing Abyss, he became Abyss. And that's a great trait to have, just playing an extension of your personality and all of it that went with it. I mean, Chris actually rocks in real life just like Abyss did, but handsome Jimmy I was mesmerized. I'm like, this is the same guy,
right?
Quiet, mild-mannered, and he's got
almost a whisper. I mean, you have to lean in to listen.
Yes, and he's clever and a great storyteller. Just nothing to do with the handsome Jimmy. And the first time I really saw handsome Jimmy, he was a heel against Lawler, and so then he turned babyface. And oh my God, I was a huge handsome Jimmy Valiant fan. But anyway, do you have a wrestler that when you met him for the first time, you thought you were meeting like an entirely different person?
Tully Blanchard. I mean, I just grew up my whole life just knowing that Tully Blanchard was the world's biggest asshole. And then I met him in real life and I was like, wow, this is not what I expected at all. You'll know what I mean when I say this. He has a light about him. And it's like, you don't have to ask, you just know from talking to him. And it's like, wow, okay, not what I expected.
Not what I expected, yeah.
Yeah. How about you? Was there anybody besides Boogie Woogie that got you like that?
Let me really, really think like that.
Did Savage always use the voice with you?
What I was about to pop in my brain is that I used to watch Randy and knew of the tension that really existed between the Poffos and the JArretts and the ICW and all that kind of stuff, and then came to work and all this. I was kind of amazed the other way with Randy. I'm like, this dude really is high strung. This ain't a complete put on. I mean, in real life, he's never at a 2 or 3. He wakes up at about 3 cups of coffee deep. Randy had an edge and an intensity about him, even in his quietest moments. I mean, when I got to the WWF 93, Rummy playing cards was a big thing, and him and Crush would play and others would play. Buddy, you play cards with him, saddle up, man. You're going to play, and you're going to not, I don't say play fair. You're going to get, you're not playing one game, because money was going to exchange hands, and you kind of had to do a best of 3, best of 5, best of 7. You couldn't just be one and done. It was go time. So Randy's intensity, I went the other way with like, man, this guy is really wired that high. So
what kind of money were y'all betting on rummy games back then? That's fascinating to me.
I'm trying to think how I don't think we did. Yeah, I want to say probably 10, 20 a game. Nothing crazy. Nothing. I certainly wouldn't play for nothing crazy.
Oh, I was fixing to say, I can't imagine you'd do it for more than bubble gum.
Exactly.
And then you'd cry about that, having to let that go.
Well, hey, I left my wallet and rental cards in the trunk. Can I get you tomorrow? I mean, I am so sorry. Hey,
you're the McDonald's guy.
Yeah, no,
If you give me
Hebner, have you got 20? I don't have cash on me. You know I don't carry. Can you give him $20? Not out of my draw, Dave. Just give him 20. What the hell do I look like, JArrett?
that's hilarious.
Got to be ready, Connie. Got to be
You
ready.
think that's a holdover from the Andre days? You said 93, but we've all heard that Andre was a big card player. Do you think that became a WWF tradition because of Andre?
I know. See, that's why I just, when I think back and hear of the times, like my dad, as crazy as it may sound, and I used to try to figure out kind of the logic of this. From Nashville to Memphis, let's say 220 miles. Nashville to Louisville, let's go 170, 180. Nashville to Evansville, maybe 150. Okay. Nashville to Lexington is 230, 240. I mean, not that big of a jump. And so back when times were good, the story goes is that my father thought, you know what? I need to not just have a limousine. Let me buy one because I'm going to use this on trips. Now, the logic of having a limousine, you're really only going to get what, 2 more people in there? I mean, a 4. So there was a logic to that. You know why? They had a custom card table built that sat in the middle of the in the back seat, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, and a little. They had a custom wood little table fold out. They played cards all the way up and all the way back. Lawler was into it. I mean, they played serious. But I think in the dressing room, obviously, before just times have changed. No cell phones, obviously, no video games, but mile after mile after mile after mile. And, a lot of guys that would come in, especially, just being on the road, I think in the modern era, you had to get to the out, on live events, house shows, you had to be there hour before bell time. But in years gone by, some guys would be out on the road. They'd get to the building 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Some guys would get there and train and do push-ups, do that, whatever it may be. I think that just kind of came from the days of the territory. That's a good question for you maybe to ask Bruce and maybe JR, because other territories, I'm just really familiar, but I've always heard stories of cribbage, rummy, canasta, if you had the running out of folks, those cards. But yeah, I know they pass the time, lots of time. I know guys in Japan tours, all the bus rides and all that, they played lots of cards just to kind of pass the time.
When you think about just the way things were and the way things are now, just that evolution, I mean, you really got to see it all. You were breaking into the wrestling business before everybody had cell phones. But I mean, before they had bag phones, even before they had beepers. And then, of course, you went through all of that to where now everybody has, little computers in their pocket. But when you think back to the way you first broke in, like I heard a quote years ago from The Undertaker, and I'm sure I'm stepping on it, but he took a lot of heat about it because I guess guys used to, back in the day, travel with weapons, whether it was a gun or a knife or something like that. And he says these days, of course, the guys play video games, and that's become a joke for the last 15 years or so, I suppose. You saw that evolution when you were first getting started way back when in the mid 80s. Was it recommended? Was it a best practice that you would have some sort of a weapon to defend yourself in your bag, or is that overblown?
I came in on the kind of the end of that, but yeah, that was a well-known thing. And I can remember, yeah, my dad asked me, Eddie Marlin. Eddie was a promoter. My dad was a promoter. When they were carrying large sums of cash, they always had a firearm under their seat because they traveled. And, sometimes you're traveling with quite a bit of cash. I always kind of somewhat saw the logic in that. I've never been a big gun guy. My little brother is a huge hunter. His walls all kind of, I mean, traveled all over the country, all over the world to hunt game. I wasn't really into that. I was a wrestling junkie. But yes, that was very common, especially again, I broke in 86 and, not long after that, Watts' territory, Crockett's territory, Florida, Kansas City, Don Owens, all of them were in the process of either shutting down or being sold. AWA, we've talked about Super Clash and all that. But certainly in the territory days, yes, it was I would say well above 50%, maybe 70, 80% guys carried a firearm. It's just kind of how it was. Because, you know, it just, especially the real journeyman, you didn't have the ability to go to the bank and, oh, I'm going to be there tomorrow. No, I'm going to be in another city, another town, and all that. So it was just such a cash driven business. So yeah.
So talk to me about that. I know this is a don't trust anyone sort of environment. And now you're going to have to respectfully get down to your underwear and go wrestle in front of strangers, AKA you got to leave your bag in the back. Now, I think most of us just assumed all these years, their bag just means maybe other gear, their street clothes, maybe whatever hotel towels Jeff stole that morning. But now we're also finding out, oh, there's also a bunch of cash. Did you have like a battle buddy and you would say, hey man, will you watch my bag? Is that protocol?
I always, if I wasn't, I'd say 80, 90% of the time I was in my own car. So in the trunk, right. One car I had anyway, hiding places in my truck, so to speak. That's where I kept everything. And, the old picture money we joke about, that stayed at the table. And then I would get that at the end of the night, count it out. And then, first gas station, same routine. Conrad, you know me. Boy, I've always been a routine guy. It would, on the stop and do what we had to do, fill up with gas,
Yep.
all that. I'd put my money wherever it needed to go. It was just kind of my routine. So a lot of guys during the match, just from different things, hold my watch, hold my cash. I've done that for so many guys through the years. I really wasn't one of those guys, never been a watch guy. My cash stayed up front. But I've done that on many occasions. And then when you're in the routine and the territory, and Frank Morrell used to, I can just hear different voices, even a Dundee, whoever it may be. If there's a new guy in the territory, it was almost an unwritten rule. You don't really leave the dressing room unattended if you're a regular. If I was downstairs and getting dressed and maybe a new guy was there, I would never go up and watch a match and leave somebody.
Leave him alone. Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't. But it was kind of an unwritten rule. That's just how things were. And then once you kind of get in the cadence and the routine, it was no big deal. But that's again just such a different era. You know what I thought you were going to say, Conrad? Just kind of on this. We went in a rabbit hole. One of the things that I do miss about just the evolution of change is the amount of times. The hours of conversation that take place on car rides or bus rides. At airports, your security, you're never really in a fixed location. But I learned so much listening in on conversations in those 7 years that I worked in the territory. And then when I got to WWE, riding with a Fuji or a Mike Rotundo, and certainly Scott and Sean, and Kevin, but kind of talking about nuances and things and working the WWF style. I flat out learned that from Sean and Scott riding in the car, because there were, and I was like, now give me a little bit of feedback on this, just the little nuances. That's something that I've over the last couple of years, Conrad, I think you know this, I've kind of gotten into Stoicism philosophy, and it's really, it processes how we think and what we should think about and different things like that. But that's all. Those guys 2,000 years ago were really guys that sat around and talked about how we think and the process and the step and how our mind and what works and what doesn't work. And so I just think the human interaction, I do think I don't want to sound like the old fuddy-duddy and all that phones are, Satan and all, whatever it is. I don't believe in that. The value of having this computer in my hand right now is unbelievable. The amount and the way I can communicate with family, friends, business, all that is amazing. But it has removed a lot of that conversation. And in our industry, nothing replaces hey man, let's talk about this. And then you take away with it what you want. You know, these guys that say you should do this or you should do that. That's for the birds. But there is a lot of upside from hearing other guys' experience. And then you kind of turn it into, I'm going to hear this story and then I'm going to figure out how it kind of works to my strengths. And then I'm going to go out and make it my own.
Man, I love sitting under your learning tree. We're not trying to steal from Jericho there.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I did want to ask, you know, because we mentioned the video game comment. When do you remember? Because you said you kind of came in at the tail end of the weaponry in the bags. When do you remember that becoming more passe, and it feeling odd when a guy had a knife or a gun or something like that in the bag?
well,
And then when do you remember first seeing a video game system that a guy was traveling with and thinking, oh, things are changing?
when you start flying airplanes, that went out the window for me.
I see. So even pre 9/11, just when air travel became a part of your career, call it 93,
Yes,
that's when it was no more.
yes, for yeah, and
Territory versus WWF said differently.
yeah, I
Okay.
think that's that. Yeah, I think that for sure is that's the definite marker.
But when you were in the territory days, it was still sort of the Wild West. So maybe you had a knife.
You know what? I was given my dad, and see, my dad was big on. Now he's a huge hunter, fisher. I mean, wildlife. He did. He loved fishing. He probably went on his more, equal amount of fishing trips, and even up. Heck, he was fishing. The last year he passed away, making trips to Florida by himself. So hunting and fishing, all this. So he guns and knives, and he was a huge gun collector and a huge knife collector throughout his life. But he always would ask me and say, "Hey," and even when I didn't, I say, "Yeah, I'm good, Dad. I'm good, Dad." But he always wanted me to be. That was truly the mindset, being protected. You know, that's kind of how the territory. Again, a guy that came in the territory, we'll say early '90s, he would look at you like, "You got what's the story I just heard?" Because it was so, the mindset had been changing. But I was, son of a promoter and grown up around different guys. Um, that was when to me the transition started, when the territory started dying. All that kind of stuff started passing away.
So if this was passed down to you from your dad, I assume it was passed down to him from Teeny. Do you think Teeny was telling old Jerry, "Hey son, you need to have a weapon on you"?
She was a little bit, heck, Teeny thought differently. Like, she's a
Yeah.
woman. It's like, I'm going to whip your ass anyway. But you better believe she had people in her office that could handle themselves physically, and certainly had a weapon on them without question. She didn't. You know what? I may be wrong on that, because she traveled. Maybe she did. I don't know. That's a good question.
The idea she had a little pea shooter in her purse tickles me.
You didn't mess with that lady. I know that. But that's how the generational mindset was.
Yeah, I mean, allegedly she threatened to kill Jack Pfeffer. I mean, we got to do a deep dive on Teeny one day, but
Oh
for
boy.
now, I do want to move on. We're 30 minutes into the show. We haven't even gotten to our topic, but look, before we move on, the video game thing. Do you remember seeing video games like guys traveling with setups and rigs? Was that a WWF thing, a WCW thing, or was that really TNA before that became commonplace? Do you think?
So I don't recall it in WWF or WCW. I don't. But
Okay.
I can remember when we started house shows. Shout out my man, the phenomenal one, AJ
Yep.
Styles. I believe he was the first one that I saw him bring the console, the actual
Yes.
deal, which I thought was, okay, man, that's pretty damn cool, in the fact that it's mobile and yeah, okay. And I always thought in my mind, okay, they're exchanging a deck of cards or cribbage table or whatever it is.
Video games.
It was an even trade. That's how or a progressive. It's the evolution of, all right, they're going to play games in the dressing room. I always thought too. Um, I'm a big. We hadn't talked a lot about this, Conrad. I'm just looking at my screen. This is episode 155. That's truly amazing to me. But I'm a huge believer in the team building aspect of the dressing room, whether it's cards or video games, getting together and getting to know one another. And it to me, it's a healthy environment because it breeds competition, good, healthy competition.
I wanted to ask, I know we've done a deep dive about this and we didn't intend to, but you are probably qualified to talk about this because you've been up and down the road and dealt with some of this. Do you think that the introduction of video games and traveling with gaming system and things like that has, in a way, maybe caused fewer guys to quote unquote party? Because it feels like in prior generations, everybody went back to the hotel bar and everybody was going to the night spot. And now these days, we hear a lot of people who are like, no, I'm just going to go back to my room and invite some buddies up and we're going to fire up the console. Not making fun. I know that you're an advocate for sobriety. I'm wondering, do you think that those two are related at all?
Without question.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a huge plus. But on the flip side of this, if you're an alcoholic or an addict, you're going to drink and play video games. So, I mean, there is a somewhat, a balancing act there. But to me, if you're playing video games, you're not doing that at the nightclub or at the saloon or even at the hotel bar. That's kind of your time management situation. A lot healthier in a lot of ways, but I also think it's just kind of a generational thing. I'm definitely pro that because that's kind of the reality of the situation of, guys take care of their money better today, take care of their health today. They're wrestling longer. God, I was watching the stat on LeBron James and just the length of his NBA basketball career and where he's at. It's mind-blowing. And I know there's football players and basketball players and baseball players, and obviously there's professional wrestlers, and by the grace of God, I'm one of them. But yeah, everything is just extended out, and I think it's not any one thing. It's just kind of lifestyle of what we eat, how we spend our time, just priorities, mindsets, how we train, all that. But I do think, yes, I think it's a huge asset to have because when you get done with the show, you're just not the adrenaline pumping and all that. You're not going right to sleep. You're just not. That ain't happening. The adrenaline dump is absolutely real. And whether you consciously or subconsciously deal with it, you will deal with it.
I want to deal with this topic today. We're going to be talking about Lockdown 2009, and we're going to, of course, touch on the AEW pay-per-view that happened this past weekend that still got people buzzing. But before we do, I felt like since we spent so much time there talking about the way wrestling used to be and the way wrestling is, we should give you a chance to talk about one of your secrets to success, one of the ways that you've been able to be as successful in the ring and in the professional wrestling industry as long as you have. And a lot of it is because of the Q3 band. Can you tell us about that, Jeff?
Buddy, and Dr. Adair will be on this show next week. He actually has a client that I'll name, leave the name out, but the client or the patient, or however it may be, is flying in and to see him. So he said, Jeff, while y'all are recording, that time doesn't work for me. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time. But this Q3 band is something that I've worn several years, but I've worn different type magnets, Conrad, going back to the mid-90s. And I've always kind of looked for an edge, just a little something there. And I've always tinkered with my diet. I've tinkered with my workouts. But the Q3 band is something that, Conrad, I can't say enough good things about it because I'm not a scientist. I'm not a salesman. I'm not an expert on anything. But what I will say is I am never been afraid to try stuff. And the Q3 band has all the science to go with it, but it's this simple. Oxygen is everybody can understand this. Oxygen is what we have to survive. And the more oxygen we have on the very grainiest level is getting oxygen to every cell in our body. The Q3 band, that's what it does. It has the ability to, from the magnets that are put in there, and I'm going to let you kind of get into all the statistics and facts and all that kind of stuff, but it blocks out all the different rays that are in our world today, namely the cell phone, but you know, the phone and all that kind of stuff that's in the unseen world. But it blocks those out. But at the end of the day, it grounds us, and everybody can kind of understand what a simple magnet does. But the Q3 band gives my ability to put more oxygen, and that means it helps with my physical health, it helps with my mental health, and it helps with my emotional health. Because if you get the 3 pillars of the health triangle, as I like to call them, you've never seen a stool, a 3-legged stool, be able to stand up on its own. If you have all 3 legs standing up and strong, it's kind of the picture of health, and that's how I look at it. And so the Q3 band, in its most simplest terms, gives my body the ability to get more oxygen in, and that's what the Q3 band does.
Most people have heard the term grounding or earthing, which experts say may be the most healing and healthy thing that could ever happen to you. Studies show if you were grounded every day, you would most likely not get stressed, not be negatively affected by the great majority of environmental toxins, have significantly more energy all the time, have significantly better sleep, have a much higher immune system, so there's less sickness and disease, and have greater emotional well-being. And how about this? Peak performance. The Q3 band is the easiest, most cost-effective way to stay grounded and to get healthy energy cells that must stay protected, strong, and youthful. It's the Q3 band, and it's going to open up strength and revive and de-age those cells by canceling the internal stress and replacing that unhealthy energy with healthy energy. Go right now to q3health.com and get your wearable stress cancellation band at a special friend of Double J price, only $65. It's a limited time offer. You heard that right. Normally this is more than a $200 product, but Jeff has worked it out so you can get it for just $65. This is what the Last Outlaw himself uses at q3health.com. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk to you. But take control of your physical and mental stress today and do what Double J did and go to q3health.com. That's q3health.com.
Conrad, one more thing.
Yep.
When we first, I don't even know if we'd done one episode. Didn't I have a conversation with you about Dr. Tim Adair?
You wanted to talk? Yes, absolutely.
So the 3 guys that are, I'll call it, on the q3health.com team are Dr. Tim Adair. He's been my guy since the mid-90s. And what he is, yes, he is a chiropractor, but he's, I don't know, I like to say you're 15 levels above. He's an applied kinesiologist that really balances everything out. And he's more of, I like to say, there's 1 or 2 ways to treat your health. You can be preventive or you can react. And Tim is in preventive maintenance, preventive health. I get all my vitamins from him. He keeps me aligned and all that. But he's going to come on the show next week and really drill down to it. He's fascinating. Conrad, he said he's going to be an open book. You ask him any questions, because I said, hey, we don't have guests on here. The star of our show is the stories. And me and Conrad are graced enough to just kind of talk about it. But Tim's going to come on. And then in a couple of weeks, Dr. Alex, and Alex is another doctor, a part of this team. And he gets more into the emotional side. It's super, he is so fascinating. And he's going to be able to tell you a story that I worked with him on the triple cage with DDP and David Arquette and Heights, and kind of how he got my mindset ready for that back in the day. And then the 3rd member of the team is super fascinating. I'm going to get this wrong, but it's Mike Flynn, and he is the oldest player to ever play college football. There's a book written about him. We'll get into all the details. LeBron James wrote the foreword of his book. But those three guys came together. A unique story on that came together. And then I was in Dr. Tim's office not long ago. And look, I've worn magnets on my feet, on my wrist, on my ankles to create, help unblock energy and meridians. And I don't want to bore people with that, but it's one of my passions in life is my health. When Tim told me, he said, "Hey man, have you heard about this? They've been selling it a few years and got the patent and all this." I said, "No." Anyway, Conrad, I started wearing this band at the end of 2021. Yeah, end of 2021. And I started thinking, now is this part of because I started working out differently, and I've gone into that with my trainer and Corey and my food, and coming off of Top Guy Weekend 2021, Conrad, I'd lost a few pounds. I got knocked out for not a standing 8 count, but anyway. But the Q3 band is, to me, one of the things that at this stage in my career, I believe it has really, really contributed to my ability to create good health. And I'm not just talking about in the gym or the weight room. I'm talking about across the board. So I can't speak high enough on that. And I went to those guys and they said, "Hey, what about getting into the wrestling world?" And I said, "Man, folks, I wear this, so I want to make sure that we do this right." And so they have knocked the price way down. I'm going a long way around to say, as they came to me, I said, "All right, you got to make it as good for my listeners as it is for me." And so that's how it's $65. Q3health.com.
Q3health.com. Jeff, we probably need a few of those this morning for Will Ospreay and Brian Danielson. Goodness gracious. They had an incredible performance on Sunday night. I had a chance to see it. I was thoroughly impressed. Some of the timing of some of the things they pulled off, I don't think will ever be replicated. You have said loud and proud for a long time here on the show that you felt like the best storyteller in the ring was Brian Danielson, and he was head and shoulders above everybody else. You got to see the next big thing in Will Ospreay challenge him, and Will picked up the win. What did you think of the performance on Sunday night?
Speaking of video games, and that's where I think Brian has always set himself apart, because as the time evolves, basketball evolves. We talked about Caitlin Clark a few weeks ago. What's Caitlin Clark? Why do I think she's a draw? I think she's the first female basketball player that you can really draw an analogy. Man, this girl looks like a video game player. She crosses half court and can launch it from anywhere. She could handle the ball, blah, 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 blah. Well, we saw that with Steph Curry. We see quarterbacks, we see point guards, we see Aaron Judge, we see the Dodger, Ohtani. Different athletes, just as the generations, they're bigger, faster, stronger, but they're just amazing. And we can easily draw the analogy of the video game. Well, I think Daniel Bryan has had the ability, and he can do all kinds of moves and all this, but to me, his timing and storytelling sets him apart. Well, then along comes Will Ospreay, and I'm not saying he's just come along, because he's been grinding and doing what he needs to do, and his Japan career speaks for itself. And now he stepped into the AEW world. I don't think athletic-wise he has a peer. He can do things candidly that other guys can't. And I also think he does the subtleties and the nuances. So look, the matches already take place, but I'm still hyped about AEW, the brand. We presented a professional wrestling match that is, you can't see it anywhere else. I'm trying to think to give descriptors to it, but man, it was one for the ages. And as a promoter, Conrad, it's this simple. I can't wait to see the rematch.
I can't wait either. It was a fantastic match. I really enjoyed the show, and I tweeted out, man, what a show after the Danielson Osprey match. I was really impressed with that and couldn't believe, wow, there's more after this. That wasn't even the last match. And I got blown up. I even got DM saying, it's not as good as WrestleMania. Who said it was? I'm allowed to like more than one thing. It's
Tribalism. Well,
I never see anything like it, Jeff. I just don't understand why if you like one thing, that means you hate everything else. What?
So I think Twitter, when did Twitter come out? 2008, 9, 10? Okay, it doesn't matter. But we're 15 years into now. It's called X. So I'm even dating myself. It's not even called Twitter anymore. But we're essentially 15 years in to that. And I know Instagram has a different audience and the comments on there are a little bit different. And TikTok has their different platform and Snapchat and even the YouTube comments. And I know they all kind of have that different flavor. But when you kind of look at X's response to a heartfelt post like you put out that you didn't, I don't imagine you did. I don't think you imagined, hey, I'm going to post this and I'm going to get some blowback, negative feedback. But on the other hand, everybody out there, let me say that, not everybody, there is a group out there that they love to assume, oh, Conrad's just stirring it up. I'll stir it right back at him, whether they believe it or not. It's become as fictitious more fictitious as professional wrestling. So they gave you blowback because of that tweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like I think you're allowed to like WrestleMania. It's not illegal. I don't. It's weird. It's a weird thing, man.
Lawler Dundee, 82, hair versus hair. Dundee loses his hair, right? 6 months later, Lawler versus Dutch Mantel. Knockdown, drag out. Sold out house. Lawler wins, beats Dutch. Of course he does. Clean in the middle. Can you imagine a fan standing up saying, this is a bunch of bullshit? That ain't nothing like Lawler Dundee hair versus hair. This sucks. Like, no. Did we?
It's crazy. Yeah, I don't understand it. But here's what I do understand: that we'd have a finite amount of time, and we better get cooking with gas because we got a lot to talk about.
I've got to be out of here, pal. Too. Good Lord have mercy.
Lockdown 2009. This is the Main Event Mafia era. It's still the hottest draw in the history of TNA television. Mick is writing a book about his journey to this show. Countdown to Lockdown is the name of the book. What do you think about Mick writing a book on the march to this show?
Fascinating. And Mick started but he came to Tennessee as a very young guy. So me and Mick have known each other since 87, 88. Then he went to Dallas, Texas, team with Gorgeous Kerry Young. Scamdar Akbar was his manager. He feuded. He did some kind of triple cage out there, wild bump taker and all that. So I've known him since we really both got started. The WWF days and all this. When he came to TNA and Barry Bloom was an agent, we'd worked out a deal. He was so kind of passionate, I'll say this, about the brand of TNA and how he could help and do this and do that. And when I heard you're going to write a book about your journey to our second biggest pay-per-view, hell yeah. Mick's always been different. And hey, look, you've done a lot of work with him. You can't really put him in one bucket. He's a wrestler. He's a comedian. He's a promoter. He's a philanthropist. He's a thinker, born and raised with parents that were educators and coaches and all that kind of stuff. So he's just a different cat. But New York Times bestselling author writing about our promotion, I was all for it.
Yeah, how could you not be? He's also going to make his TNA television wrestling debut on March 19th. It's going to be you and Mick teaming up against Sting and Kurt Angle. That draws 1.8 million viewers. Man, that's your first match on TV since 06. I mean, so after you've been off television for nearly 3 years and his first match here, wow, that's a big night. What do you remember of that?
We've talked, we've over the last couple of months, we've kind of talked about this era and the tailwind and all the pieces of the puzzle. And look, we had obviously sown so many seeds with the front line, AJ Styles, Chris Daniels, Samoa Joe. We'd gone through the Kurt Joe era and all that. The Main Event Mafia came together, but just the table to me was set. You had the heels and the establishment, and all 5 guys were not from the TNA brand. You had me and Mick, that it was, I was the founder of the organization, and Mick's passion and his promo cutting skills, he oozed it that hey man, what's best for the brand? And then you had AJ and Joe and Eric Young and Bobby Roode and James Storm and all that kind of stuff. So all the recipe was there. And when we were kind of laying out, again, it's TV season, January, February, March, April. It's the time of year to do it. You just said it. Mick had not yet wrestled yet. I hadn't wrestled in several years. Main Event Mafia was red hot. We knew we were wanting to get to Sting and Mick. And so we, in the writing of the shows, build. And it just felt time, it felt right to pull the trigger. Jeff wrestles Mick for the first time. Let's blow it out. And it delivered. And those kind of episodes and shows and the work that we would put downstairs, in my basement, and the creative, and to get that number come in Friday afternoon, 3:30. It was, those were fun times, Conrad. Just a lot of fun to do that.
You put together a match here where Foley's limitations could be covered up, according to Dave Meltzer. He would also like the story that you guys were telling, where Sting wants to show mercy on poor Mick Foley, and Kurt Angle does not. Kurt doesn't even want to pin him and end it. He wants the beatings to continue, and Sting wants it to end. Eventually, Foley gets a chair, and he even hits Sting. And the commentators are acting like, hey, did he just turn heel? But no, it's just Mick Foley leaning into the Mankind persona, saying, who are you to say when I've had enough? And he finishes with, have a nice day. I like the presentation of Mick here. This is fun. And I'm sure it was something that you guys all spent time working around, whatever his limits were, or, when a guy hasn't wrestled for a long time and has obviously been beat up and put through the ringer, and nobody did more of that than Mick, you probably do want to, plan for that. But one of the things that stood out in the write-up about the match is you actually hit a pedigree, which Meltzer thought was funny. Talk to me about you pulling off a pedigree in a match. I don't remember you doing one before this.
What's funny, so I had to have hit it on Kurt. No, who was it?
I think it was Kurt.
Yeah. I don't ever remember saying, hey man, I'm going to do this. Maybe at the time I did, but no, it's like, no, let's move into this, some kind of move set. But all right. So Conrad, here's what I want to make my point. Marcus, will you pull up that picture of Jeremy and Mick again? Because I was good. The point I want to illustrate is this: we were doing good numbers, or record numbers, as you stated, and everything that went with it. Now, me hitting a pedigree, Meltzer reported on it. Maybe there's a ha-ha moment, maybe whatever it may be, but was somewhat, and I'm not raining just on Dave. I'm just kind of saying the narrative of the journalism, if you will. But the reality is that picture right there, to me, says a lot. That is serious Mick Foley with the mindset, I'm going to sell buy rates or ratings, or I'm going to be serious Mick to draw money. And that during this time, yes, we had comedy on the show in other places, and I'm sure Mick would throw out a funny line here or there, but everybody kind of came to the table. And look, every now and then Kurt would be funny, or Nash or Booker would be funny, but for the most part, it was all serious business on rowing in the same direction to really create some intensity in our story. And that's I really remember this time with that with fondness in that aspect, that we were there to do business, and no, it wasn't. We came to work, so to speak.
Well, let's talk about something else that's going to work here. It's a decision to pull talent from Ring of Honor. This is the era where Ring of Honor is going to be making their national television debut on HD Net. And as a result of them now having a national television presence, TNA is going to pull Samoa Joe, Homicide, Hernandez, all future talent who has been appearing in both places is no longer eligible. Talk to me about that. What do you remember of this this move to HD Net for Ring of Honor, and how the talent and the industry reacted to you guys saying, well, you can't go there anymore?
So I want to kind of make sure that I frame this right. I believe this is March of 2009.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we had been on national TV a couple of years. I don't know, remember, because Ring of Honor and TNA both started within 12 months of each other. So
yeah, they were February, you were June.
Okay. Yeah. So, gosh, within 4 months of each other. We both knew on both sides there was going to come a day that, hey, you can't really present both rosters. But we had kind of at an arm's length, specifically Bob Ryder, and that would ebb and flow, but AJ and Daniels and Joe, and there were several folks, Motor City, I don't know if it was Motor City Machine Guns yet, but, had gone back and forth and worked both. But as time was coming on, and then they announced their HD Net deal, the talent, they realized that, hey, we're probably not going to be able to do both. And, the open lines of communication that we had, it was never a big deal internally, because at this point now in 2009, we were running live events, and I don't really think there were guys that we were giving them, the top guys, plenty of work. And I don't remember it being an issue at all. But to take a step back, Spike TV at this point, 2 hours on a Thursday night, we were trying to figure out how to create more content, more programming, maybe another hour. The success of the ratings were going. We had been kind of that I don't want to say stepchild, but we were not as high on the priority list as UFC was, and Ultimate Fighter and all that. But we were getting traction and getting a little bit better and a little bit better. There's no way Spike was going to go for us. Hey, yeah, they're stars that they're investing millions of dollars in every week with TV time, that they were going to let them moonlight or be on any other nationally distributed show. So it's kind of a no-brainer. And everybody had open communication and was aware of it. It really wasn't that big of a deal.
What might have been a big deal was a lawsuit that was being put together at the time that could have affected the industry. Raven, Chris Canyon, Mike Sanders, and others are all going to join in and try to sue the WWE. And it all boiled down to the whole independent contractor versus employee lawsuit. This was something that had everybody talking. Was this at least something that you and Dixie were discussing? Hey, this could change everything, because if a ruling happened that affected WWE, it would in theory affect you guys as well. No?
Sure. And it was always, and look, from the day I got in the business, my accountant, who's still my accountant today, his first boss or mentor was my dad's accountant. And so I can remember having conversations. When did Jesse, when did that whole union, was that mid 80s when that first talk came out?
No, it would have been very, very early 90s.
Okay. I remember hearing those conversations as far back then. And then when we got together with Panda and kind of, I'll call it year one, my father would have long conversations with their legal team, just kind of because again, they're an energy company, and getting them to kind of understand the independent. Wait, you're an independent contractor, but you can't go work. Well, no, we're not preventing them from work. From the naked eye, it's like, how in the world does that exist? Because it had been so different until the late 80s when WWF and WCW, our listeners know that whole story. But as it came on the scene, here we are, and I totally forgot about this until I read the research. I just remember WWE is going to react first, period. That is at this stage in 2009, there was the WWE and publicly traded company. They're definitely going to set the standard. And we have to wait and see how it affects them. Was there conversations between me and Dixie? Yeah, probably, but nothing in depth.
Talk to me about what happened in San Juan. It looks like there was an arena booked for March 20th. It was an 18,000 seater. They had announced Kurt Angle versus Jeff Jarrett. They're also going to be using LAX, and it's an 18,000 seater, but it winds up getting canceled due to a poor advance. Is this just you not having the right local promoter down there, or was it a tactical error to book such a big building? Or talk to me about what lesson we learned here.
We were running live events and doing, sure, the statistics around, let's say 2,000 a show, and a promoter in Puerto Rico probably had a lot bigger ambitions. No, they did. He booked it. It was a Balt show. I think it was canceled when he didn't send his deposit, because I don't ever recall. I think I'd recall sending money back. But he just thought he could do more, and it probably had seen a WWE, and then, on the island in Puerto Rico, music and a lot of American acts go down through there. We weren't anywhere there. We had no business, or let me say this, the promoter had no business booking that size arena. Like, ludicrous. But it was the third party's decision to buy the show, and we executed. I'm assuming we executed the contract, and then he put tickets on sale and says, "Whoa, I'm out."
Let's talk about Danny Bonaduce. He's set up to be working this lockdown show in Philadelphia, and I guess it doesn't go all that smoothly. At the time, he's been working with Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling. We had just talked about that. That aired towards the end of 2008. And so here we are in the first part of 2009. So he's fresh off of that experience. He's got a mega radio show, and it's going to be him versus Eric Young. And Eric Young is actually going to come out and say that his match is a letdown. Quote, at one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year, wrestling you, to be honest, it's kind of a letdown. It's nothing against you personally, but it doesn't do a lot for my wrestling career because I'm a professional wrestler. And I guess the story is Bonaduce was pretty pissed off when he found out from reading the Observer, or someone told him it was in the Observer, that this match was going to be a dark match. And he's going to be adequate or adamant rather, that, hey, the only reason I'm doing this is to get exposure for my radio show. I'm doing it for free. I'm not getting paid. So I'm doing it for exposure. It can't be a dark match. And then he's told, no, you're on the free 30-minute pay-per-view special. Okay, he's back in. What do you remember about Bonaduce here?
I love it. He was on Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling, and as you described it, what is the hold on. Work shoot, brother.
Yeah.
He was a Philly and a hell of an athlete. And I'll do my best, Conrad. Hey, folks, go out of your way if you want to be entertained. He's a really good athlete. And Eric did fantastic. Bonaduce did fantastic. We didn't have to write a story. That was the story that we just crafted and twisted, and a little bit here and a little bit of there, but it played out exactly as it was supposed to play out. I mean, that's what's great about our business. And I don't know if Meltzer was, who knows with Dave. As every day goes by, he's a little bit more of a head scratcher. But so did he really think that we're going to go to Bonaduce and his radio show, if I remember correctly, at the time was red hot in Philly, and we're going to, hey, we want you to come wrestle on this show, but we're not going to tell you you're not on the show. We're going to put you on the free pre-show.
The March 26th edition of Impact does a very good rating. It's up against the NCAA tournament. It has 1.7 million viewers. It does a 1.26. It's a decent show with a great in-ring segment with Mick Foley and Sting. There's a promo with Kurt bringing up that you're the founder and the booker. And Meltzer says, just once I want to see a movie where there's a big star who has creative control and he beats up the villain. The villain gets up and says he used his creative control. Or better yet, before the fight scene, the villain is storming around saying the script says I have to lose the fight at the end, so I'm going against the script. Can you imagine the reaction of people watching the movie who've invested 90 minutes and get hit with that? That's TNA every Thursday night. What do you think of that criticism, Jeff?
Take myself off mute. I'm dehydrated. I'm parched. What do I think of that criticism? Honey, I have said this many, many times in a creative room. I didn't say this, but to make the simplistic, he's spot on. Too much inside baseball. It just dispels like the Bonaduce thing. Why pull out why reveal all the magic trick? Or well, there's so many different ways to say it, but there's no upside to that. And yes, the follow-up, you think Russo did that? Yeah, I would almost be positive it would be a comment that to kind of go one step further, but that's the balance that we always fought. But no, I just don't see any upside in saying, hey, you're the booker. Kurt, I call it the kick-ass version of Kurt, the serious. There was no upside in that. So I think it's healthy criticism.
We got to talk about Rocky Romero. He is going to be lately known as the New Japan vice president. And I think he's the first person to ever be a vice president in two companies at once, both AEW and New Japan. But I want to know, was he your conduit for New Japan back then, or who were you working with in 09? I asked because you've got Team 3D and they're the IWGP champs, and you're going to have them wrestle the Beer Money TNA tag team champions. So you got title versus title, and it feels like that sort of thing would have to be discussed. Who was your liaison back then?
Joe. Oh my gosh. I'm drawing a blank because through the years, it's kind of, my understanding, it's morphed through the years. Ghetto still booking, but Carl Anderson played a pretty big role before he went to WWE. Rocky, man, what a maybe I shouldn't call him an unsung hero because he's getting his flowers, but what a fantastic job he's doing in just what you said. He's New Japan and AEW and bringing the promotions, or being the conduit, bring the promotions together and the vision of all that. But in those days, good Lord, Conrad, I can't think of Joe's last name. But he was always our day-to-day contact, and on our side, Bob Ryder. But what a healthy relationship. And this is where, I look back and we're doing the podcast and the frustration. But at one time, Motor City Machine Guns with the IWGP Junior, 3D was the tag, and Kurt was in the title picture. A super, super, super healthy relationship between TNA. Obviously, the legendary story is they sent Okada over, but man, he formed some relationships that to this day are tight and very fruitful. That's where he met the Bucks and others. Okada did, but my gosh, Conrad, Joe
Higuchi.
Tiger Hattori. I'm calling him Joe. Tiger Hattori.
Okay. I was going to say,
Lord. Yeah.
Tiger Hattori makes more sense. And using Mando makes more sense. This is something that Jeff and I have been on for a while now, and we can't wait to tell you about it.
Here we go.
I mean, listen, what's the most important thing in the world? 5-star matches. And what's the second most valuable thing in the world? Time. Managing and worrying about body odor used to take up time, but not anymore. You don't have to be paranoid about smelling. Not since you switched to Mando whole body deodorant. You're going to free up some time. Enough time to finish WrestleMania night 1 and night 2 and the pre-show and the 0 hour and the pay-per-view and the reaction and the press conference. Yeah, you could do all of that, still be smelling good. Mando doesn't cover up the odor after the fact with heavy fragrances. No, they leave that to all the other deodorants. See, what Mando does is they stop the odor at the source by blocking the bacteria on your skin from eating your sweat, which is the actual cause of BO. Now, what does this mean? It means that Mando is clinically proven to control odor up to 72 hours. That's a long time. So give yourself the precious gift of time and get yourself some Mando whole body deodorant. And right now, new customers can get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack when they use our code MyWorld at shopmando.com. I got to tell you, this hasn't just been a hit with me. It's been a hit with my wife. She tried it and absolutely loves it. So it's not just for guys. It's for anybody who wants to smell better, okay? Well, let's just be honest. We're guys listening to this. If you're tired of stinking and you don't want to stink and you're worried about stinking, get rid of your stinking thinking. Get some Mando. It's safe to use anywhere on your body. You can use it on your armpits, your grundles, your balls, your belly button, your butt crack, your stinky crevices. Maybe you got some smelly ass feet. I know that Marcus does. Mando can help you out. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Mando whole body deodorant is powerful enough for the toughest body odor, but gentle enough to use anywhere, allowing you to put Mando in the family jewels without worry, because Mando is aluminum free, baking soda free, cruelty free, dye free, vegan free, and it's going to help you be stink free. It's clinically proven to control odor better than just a soap with shower alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor level is a 5 out of 10. But with Mando, the average grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. It's too late for us to tell Vader about this, but there's still time for you. Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes and free shipping. And luckily, Jeff has a special discount for you, so you can get your favorite whole body deodorant on the market. New customers can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack, boys and girls. Go right now and use the code MyWorld at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Jeff, you've wrestled a lot of wrestlers over the years. Who takes the cake? Who was stinky? Who needed some Mando? Who do you wish you could have smartened up about Mando?
Conrad, don't put me on the spot there. There's some.
Come on. Spill the beans. We want to hear the stinky names.
Well, back in the day, there's guys that are smokers and cigar smokers, and
comes in their pores and all that.
Oh well, let's see. Old Donnie Bass had some cigar, and Bobby Jaggers had some cigar. Big Van Vader. I mean, we could, there's no need to go into all that, Conrad. But I will say this: back in the day, some folks could use some Mando, but today, no. Hey, that 72-hour deal, Conrad, I've used it. That's amazing. How the hell do they create product that last 3 freaking days? That's with 2 showers a day.
Shopmando.com. Use the code MyWorld. Shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Use our code MyWorld. Let's talk about a quote from the Torch here. TNA President Dixie Carter responded to Vince McMahon's comments about TNA programming being reprehensible by pointing out what she believes to be reprehensible angles on WWE programming the last 3 weeks. Early last week, McMahon told the Hollywood Reporter he's not concerned about TNA as competition to his WWE business. His concern is TNA presenting some reprehensible content on Impact because they have a T14 rating. McMahon said TNA needs to, quote, get with the times and adopt a policy of PG-rated television. TNA President Dixie Carter would shoot back that recent programming hasn't represented PG TV for WWE. Quote, I think it's wonderful that Vince watches TNA Impact, and I agree with him that things such as the brutal beating of a 60-year-old man, a vicious home invasion, and gratuitous man-on-woman violence can be seen as reprehensible, and that's just the last 3 Monday nights. Dude, Dixie Carter, when she wants to put on her PR hat, she's pretty badass.
She's very good. Has always, and we've said it on the air 1,000 times. That's how we originally came together. Just a skill set like none other. Sharp, crafty, can deliver it. She can write like no tomorrow. But isn't it ironic, don't you think, Alanis Morissette? It's the playbook that WWE, the analogy TNA and AEW, how they position. What was the word? Reprehensible?
Yes.
Oh, mercy. That's a strong one. But no, I get it.
Succotash.
But that's the way to be. All positioning, all PR movement. They should be PG-13. Why should they? Oh, because we're that way. I get it. Good stuff, though.
We got to talk about the NASCAR Association. You guys have a NASCAR branded truck. You're going to be the primary sponsor in the truck series. And I'm sure there's some crossover between racing and wrestling, but is Dixie on board with this? I mean, I know you've got a bunch of ties to NASCAR. What'd you think of this?
What? No, her and Hermie. So Hermie Sadler, longtime friend, met him and Elliott actually in Las Vegas, 94. And then that's how we started they brought a simulator to a WWE live event. Me and Hermie, we go way, way back. Just talked to him yesterday, but he was I'll call it a friend of the promotion through and through. And there would be opportunities because he spent a lot of time. I don't know, 10, 12, 14 years with Fox Sports commentating, but he had a long driving career. Elliott had a long driving career. Hermie would he would have different sponsors come to him and put together, want him to drive a truck. I don't know, 12, half a season, 12 races, whatever it may be. But when he in those opportunities, he would always bring us an opportunity, but he ran some of his own shows, but he ran quite a few TNA shows in the North, South Carolina, Virginia area. Just always a great friend of the promotion. And him and Dixie had a good have a good relationship. But he brought us an opportunity to sponsor the truck. We jumped at it. And, Dixie, again, on the PR side, the marketing side, she absolutely saw the crossover. There's a boatload of statistics that existed in the 90s and during this time. Be curious to kind of see. No, they're still there because NASCAR is going back the other way. They got their product had aged, but look, wrestling has aged from time to time. But at the very core, the consumers, they're there. I've always said that wrestling and racing have a massive amount, and I say NASCAR, not maybe Formula One and maybe not others, but NHRA. Some of those folks came out to Indianapolis last week. So there's a massive crossover in racing and wrestling, and we tried to capitalize on it as much as we could.
Let's mention that it's working, whatever you're doing here, because Impact on April 2nd does a 1.33 rating and 1.97 million viewers. So slightly below the record rating, but the actual viewers were the most in history. So much it actually beats the Ultimate Fighter and even the Ultimate Fight Night from the day before. It does a 1.3 in males 18 to 34, a 1.3 in males 35 to 49, both record-setting numbers. It's ranked number 2 on cable in adult males, only behind the NBA basketball games on TNT. It's a big deal, and Meltzer's pretty complimentary. He says, this show has really turned around after hitting major depths not all that long ago. This show was better than all but a few WWE TV shows of the past few months. The angles are more focused, but the biggest difference is Mick Foley is really into it. When he teased dropping an elbow off the top of the cage on Sting a few times during the show and acted way off, he gave his character a necessary facelift to survive past being a short-term nostalgia act. Did you feel like you guys were really hitting your stride creatively too? I mean, Meltzer's got some high praise here.
Conrad, I did. And the reason, like I stated earlier in the pod, is that it was a time of reaping, if you will, the seasons of sowing that we really had in that going back. I guess this last weekend was an anniversary of the first time AJ became NWA champion. Me and him in the ring, or some anniversary I saw on X, not Twitter. But no, as far as just sowing the seeds of AJ and Samoa Joe and those guys that I had referenced earlier, and then the Main Event Mafia coming together. Kurt had been a part of the brand for a couple of years at this time. Kevin, Scott, Booker, just Sting, all the pieces of the puzzle really started rolling together. It was the time of year, the TV time of the year, lockdown coming up. Again, things just were gelling. I thought me and Mick were not the wild card, but I thought there was a lot of believability in, of course, our awareness, but the angst. I think the viewer could feel kind of our frustration, and of course, the heels playing their right, antagonist role, if you will. Baby faces playing their role. It all just worked together, and we were all playing extensions of our personality, and there was a lot of blending of the reality. I mean, people were very passionate about get those old guys off TV, get those old guys off TV, give the new guys an opportunity. And there's validity to that, but there's also a balance and a yin and a yang at that to get the young guys up and running and prominent, that's how the business has always worked. I mean, Lawler back in the territory days, or Dusty, or Eddie Graham, or the Von Erichs, or any territory was built around a hot babyface, and you just brought new heels in, build them up young, and keep moving. But you always kept underneath talent fresh and turned over. I don't call it a formula, but it is somewhat a simple formula on how to continue to create revenue in the industry. You kind of look at this last year's WrestleMania and look at the mix in that. My goodness. I mean, Cody ain't the new kid on the block, but his story and his journey, and pardon the pun on story, but just look at that. And then the Hollywood box office attraction coming back in, and it wrote itself in so many ways.
I wanted to ask you about the cost cutting that has to happen in this time. I mean, on the one hand, creatively and ratings and viewership, man, we're hitting a home run, but maybe behind the scenes, we're scrambling a little bit. Meltzer's going to sort of recap the state of the financial situation, saying that you're trying to cut some office expenses and some travel. You've already cut down on the number of people who were coming to TV. And now there's some concerns about, hey, DVD sales are in bad shape, and our pay-per-view distributor, or our DVD distributor, they're not having their best year. Midway is really struggling financially. We're supposed to be doing year 2 of the video game, but there's some doubt as to whether or not that will happen because of Midway. You've signed the deal with Jack Specific, and you're excited to be in business with them, but before they can put out TNA action figures, you've got to let their WWE contract lapse. You knew that going into it, but still, we got to get some more money coming in here. And if we can't, we need to cut some expenses. So one of the ideas you have is, instead of doing a pay-per-view and then 2 days of tapings like you have been, what we'll do is we'll do a pay-per-view and we'll do 3 days of taping. And across those 3 days, we'll actually film 4 episodes of TV. And I guess there was some concern that maybe guys would get burnt out, and that 4th week, which should be your go home for pay-per-view, might suffer. What did you think of this schedule and this shuffle? I know you've always ran a P&L. You've always operated wrestling promotions as if it was a small business, and hey, we got to make dollars. And if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. Talk to me about this, and how was it received to go to pay-per-view and then taping 3 days?
Not good by anybody involved doing it. And, Conrad, it's so easy, as I said here in April of 2024, to kind of look back on all this. And I do understand it, but we are, again, April at this time of 2009. So almost 7 years into the Panda investment. And the simple terms, we started making money when we got on Spike, and now we're 3 years in 2 hours. And we had gone through that iteration of taking some pay-per-views on the road that, certainly didn't increase revenues. But Conrad, the real inside baseball, the whole DNA of it is that as an investor, Panda wanted their money back. And in my opinion, too quick, too soon. And this was a mandated investor. We want more money, because he was taking profits every quarter, but they wanted more, and y'all figure out how to do it. And so the only way to substantial, you can cut a guy here, cut a guy there. You certainly can't go to talent and ask them to take a pay cut, because you're trying to attract. And at this time, our talent budget was pretty damn healthy. I mean, Kurt and all the Main Event Mafia, and then AJ was happy with his money. Nobody's always fully happy. Talent never are, but our talent payroll was up there, and we had about 30 to 40 talent on the show as a rotation, all that. So you can kind of trim talent, but the ways to really slash costs is production. And so when you basically eliminate an Orlando production, that's massive in the grand scheme of things. But I just thought it was too soon. I thought it was too damaging, and the restrictions it puts on creative due to injury, due to just the production schedule, the creativeness, you have to go in. So when we left our house, let's say on a Thursday afternoon, we had to have the pay-per-view and 4 2-hour shows written. And if the pay-per-view finishes didn't quite come off like we wanted them to, so then you got to, shift that domino. All right, that's going to come with the territory. But when you shift that domino, then that takes you all the way next creatively to the next pay-per-view. So those 4 TVs that you had written, you kind of have to alter. And when you don't have talent there, you have a set group of talent there. It's not like you can bring guys in and out. I mean, it was a challenge. And I just think, again, Bob Carter initially made the decision to invest. So it was 100% his call. Understood it. I was grateful. I was respectful. Yes, sir. That's what we're going to do. But did I think it was the right decision? No.
Let's talk a little bit about the ratings that come in a week later. It's a 1.32 on April 9th, and it's 1.9 million viewers. It's second on the night, again, behind NBA basketball and TNT. The adult male rating is down just a little bit, but still, we're doing really, really well. I want to ask you about something that happened creatively that I found a little interesting. We've got Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, the Motor City Machine Guns. We've talked about this earlier this year and even some last year, where they were uncomfortable bleeding and just didn't want to do it. And there was talk that perhaps they were being punished for not wanting to bleed. And now they're going to be wrestling Mick Foley in a first blood match. Now, Foley can't call his sock Mr. Socko, and he can't draw on it. I guess WWE sent a cease and desist. Now we're just using a blank sock and calling it the sock. But still, when it looks like Foley goes to win, he's telling the referee, oh no, we're not going to end it because a thimble full of blood came out. We're going to open his head up. And of course, on commentary, they're really talking about, hey, this is the first time these guys have bled in TNA. Is this just a function of people are talking about it, so let's give it to them and lean into it?
I think that is maybe a byproduct of it. If that makes sense. The real Mick likes Alex and Chris.
Yeah,
we needed a tag team. I think the kind of the fun, the narrative, those guys didn't want to get juice. I got it, but I didn't get it like others. Okay, I understand that, but this is kind of the how our business operates. But when it came right down to it, no, that wasn't the reason they were put into that. Mick really likes those guys, and rightly so. He saw a lot of talent in them.
We all see a lot of talent in those guys, and I'm anxious to see where they show up next. Wink, wink. Taz has left WrestleMania. I couldn't believe that. He quit WWE. I guess his contract rather finished up right before WrestleMania, and he didn't renew, and he didn't even try to extend and stay through WrestleMania. He honored his original contract and commitment, and despite Vince McMahon wanting him to stay on at least for WrestleMania, he said thanks but no thanks, and he's out of there. Were you aware that he was leaving? I mean, the real life Taz doesn't seem like he would leave WWE unless he felt like he had a place to come here. Did you know he was coming? Is that why some of the Don West stuff had already started to happen? You're trying to make room for Taz, or talk to me about Taz.
Not to my knowledge. No, not saying that Dixie. No, to my knowledge, no. Why did he leave? Do you know? When I was reading the notes, I'm like, I'm going to ask Conrad, because I guess the real story had to have come out.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that the real story ever did come out. I think a lot of people, I mean, JR and I just talked about this not long ago. He was shocked that Taz didn't hang around through WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It feels like most everybody hangs out through WrestleMania. He did not. So that WrestleMania had a 3-man team. Instead of there being one team here and one team there, it was a 3-man team. And
interesting.
Taz was nowhere to be found. But it feels like my guy Taz would not have just quit his job without having another job lined up. But what do I know? This is from the Torch. TNA on-air authority figure Jim Cornette says TNA needs to start a developmental program or work with an existing developmental program to sustain the company's ability to draw an audience in the long term. TNA needs to bring in, on a constant basis, new, fresh talent. That's how you create stars. I think they will need to do that ongoing. They probably will sooner or later. They need to find new stars. What do you think of him saying TNA needed a developmental league? Did you guys ever consider trying to find that in the budget, or did you have a different approach?
Well, the financials of starting a developmental can fluctuate enormously.
Crazy. Yes.
They really can't. But at this stage, independent wrestling had begun to get healthy. Obviously Ring of Honor's out there, and they had developed and brought a lot of guys in. And then, you know, Japan's promotions, guys were getting work out there. We weren't in a position financially to just start writing checks. It's the amount of money through the years at NXT, massive, but you know, there's always a different lens to, you know, to view that through. You look at, I mean, Major League Baseball is another set of circumstances that they're going through right now. It's presented a great opportunity for Springfield Lucky Horseshoes and the Prospect League and Woodbat leagues like that. But, you know, Major League Baseball is whittling down their developmental system. They see more upside in the NIL and kids being developed in colleges and not in AAA, AA, single A, high single, low single, rookie, and all that. So just kind of evolving with the times. That's why I think in a lot of ways, me being a wrestling junkie, for me, has always kind of kept me in tune with different guys in different places, in different promotions all over the world. And I think because the cream, truly, I believe this, I've been taught this, but I've seen it firsthand. The cream always rises to the top. If you're good at this and you're going to get work and you're going to get buzz, no matter what level it is, you're going to keep going up and up and up. Again, we didn't have the ability, but we kept our ear to the pavement and tried to hear about new things. Because, you know, when I read that quote from Jim Cornette, I could plug in JArrett, Jerry Lawler, so many different people, because guys that book Dutch Mantel, I mean, Dusty, I can remember me and Dusty talking about the Asylum shows when he was driving up every week, and I would pick his brain on a Wednesday afternoon when I have just, I don't say a lull in the spot. He would sit out in the arena and hold court and entertain guys. And then other days he would be into what he's doing that night and whatever. But I can remember him, you know, he'd call me Double J, just say, all right, what you got coming up? You know, that generation, we talked a lot before we got going on the territory days, the way those promoters really kept going, we've talked about the Jack Welch, is the turnover, the massive turnover in talent continually. And I think there's a real upside. And when I look at AEW, the massive talent roster, I think there is a brilliance in it because it can keep people super, super, super fresh and a constant turnover. And, that there is so much upside. And historically speaking, that's just how our business works. I mean, to Cornette's quote, it's easy to say TNA ought to have a developmental. It's a whole nother thing to finance that thing, but there is truth in that.
Let's talk a little bit about something that happens on TV here. Vince Russo is going to make a rare appearance on TNA programming. It's on the latest edition of the internet show Spin Cycle. It's sort of a laid back show, and he's greeted with a classic Fire Russo chant in the background, and his cell phone goes off. And there's a roundtable discussion, which Russo is a part of. He's trying to stir up Mike Tenay regarding the Don West storyline. And he's calling Abyss one of the most fugly individuals he'd ever seen. Talk to me about this. It feels like something you guys would have discussed. Once upon a time, it was, no, Russo can't be on TV. And now, well, it's okay if it's an internet show. Is that the thinking? Or
there you go. I mean, I'm not going to say they didn't run it by me. I mean, I don't know that. I don't recall that. But when I think of 2009 Spin Cycle, I think of Jeremy Borash, and Jeremy he's super creative and just kind of creating that. In those days, the internet and television content were light years apart. They weren't even, nowadays, to me, depends on how you view it. And boy, I got all kind of ideas about that, but it is one and the same. There is no difference. People consume content through their phone, whether it's TBS, TNT, YouTube. That's the reality. And these days, it's just the internet, what you just said. That was kind of the mindset.
Let's talk a little bit about another quote from Dave Meltzer here. He's talking about the April 16th Impact and that it did a 1.28 rating. That's 1.7 million viewers. More importantly, though, it's the highest rated show in males 18 to 49 on cable during the entire 2 hours. That's got to be all that matters for Spike and TNA, right? I mean, yes, okay, less people watched, but how do you beat number one in the demo? If you're number one, where else is there to go?
And I keep saying, and look, there's so many, gosh, can you imagine if in today's environment, if these numbers would have come out way back when? I can hear whether it's Keller or Meltzer or Mike Johnson, whatever journalists, they would not write an article, I don't believe, without highlighting that Spike was not a top 10 network. They were 18, 19, 23, 24. And so your cum average, that's a big deal. So a highest in the demo for a top 10 network is, okay. But our value at the time in April of 2009 to Spike TV was way up there, pal. It was fantastic. And, as I was reading through our notes, Conrad, and I think they started in February or maybe February, March or whatever, kind of running through April. I think back a year later after this, I can't imagine even 6 months really. Kevin K's like, okay, now where'd our executive producer go? Like, what happened? Just insane. Because we were clicking from a network perspective. Of course, they could care less about buy rates. They could care less about live attendance. They could care less about revenues. That at this point, they wanted us to deliver a 2-hour show that got ratings. And that's what we were doing.
It's working, and we're finally here after a very good go home show with AJ Styles and you doing a show long storyline, the return of Christopher Daniels, and we're finally at lockdown. April 19th, 2009. The prior month pay per view did 30,000 buys. This does 40,000, so it's up quite a bit, but it's way down from the prior year. Lockdown in 08 did 55,000 buys. The show got 45% thumbs up, 43% thumbs in the middle, 11.3% thumbs down. When you
89% of Meltzer readers like the show.
Yes. By the way, that was 118 folks. 118 folks liked it, 15 did not.
Okay. That's great.
I mean, listen, I know that percentages, sometimes don't tell the whole story. You say the full number just to give you an idea of the sample size. What do you think about that, though? 40,000 from 55,000. Why would Main Event Mafia's here? Foley's here. Why the drop off, do you think?
Look, there is no exact science, but I've had this conversation. I'm a junkie on live events too, Conrad. Music promoter in town. And I'll say he's not just a promoter. He's a little bit of everything. Music manager, because touring, all that, how their business radically changed from, the put an album out, put a CD out, put a single out, then the streaming world, just the monetization of the industry, just how it's changed. And when I look at, I'll call it the lack of buys of TNA, and people were like, and look, Meltzer, to his defense or whatever it may be, I'm the one who lived it. I'm the one who invested it. Bob Carter's the one who invested it. The lack of revenue generated by pay-per-view at the time, yes, we were frustrated, but we also weren't near as frustrated because you can kind of look at today's numbers and this and that. And look, WWE, they were the 8,000-pound gorilla and everything that went with it. But just how the world, we're still in cable days. That's it. I never lose sight when I really go back in this time to create the revenue. The consumer could not go to Triller, could not go to ppv.com, could not go to YouTube. Those ease of the Apple Wallet generation of just clicking by and watching the show, they weren't around yet. So you had to purchase it. If you purchased it on cable, then you had to write your cable bill 30 days later, and they had to collect, and so on, so and so and so and so. Direct to dish, they're 30 days shorter, so they had a 60-day or end of the month plus 60, end of the month plus 90. Just the way the world, consumed pay-per-view in those days, I think says a ton of it. And I'll end with this. My music buddy, I'll just say this. He was wondering this one kind of question. He goes, back in the day, what the number one pay-per-view product was? And of course, Conrad, I said, yeah. I mean, in the Attitude Era is WWF, WCW, and a Mike Tyson fight. He said, wrong. I said, oh, okay. De La Hoya, I'm just all that. And UFC came on and all this. And he goes, no. You know what the number one pay-per-view product was? I'm like, what? He said, porn.
Yep. Always and forever. It's undefeated, Jeff.
Well, so let me ask you, Connie, do you think it's still number one today?
Oh, since it's free now. Yeah, maybe not.
I think my guess would be that industry has had to have taken a massive blow. But
they got to be selling a bunch in hotel rooms still.
Okay. But my point being, look, back in the day, I agonized over this, but the luxury of doing the podcast and look at the demo, we were hitting the demo and the teenagers and this and that. And look, I'll even say the amount of money Don West was generating on a internet only audience, because I think it was different. It was, I mean, fascinating, Conrad, just fascinating how he could generate that kind of revenue, and his salesmanship. Yes. So when you kind of try to do checks and balances, our ratings were good, our merch was good, but just the period of creating pay-per-view buys wasn't there. And I yes, you can blame it, and I've said it, and I think it's rightly so. We were sacrificing get ratings versus buy rates. But I just wonder, I'll just say that, how much of the generation that we were in, how much it really hurt us. Because today, the ease and the technology, and now all, Bleacher Report, Triller, pay-per-view.com, how many different places was Dynasty on, just on streaming? There were multiple this weekend, which I thought was great.
It is great, and the technology is now even helping with your balls. Today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Did you know that one man every hour, every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer? In fact, testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer among men aged 15 to 35. With April being National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, our friends over at Manscaped have partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to help spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. Visit manscaped.com/TCS to learn how to check yourself for early signs of cancer. And as always, you can use our promo code MyWorld for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. I want to take a second to talk about some men's health issues that are important to me. I do this because my dad, more than a decade ago now, actually battled, and I'm happy to say, beat prostate cancer. And with this in mind, I want to tell you that you can perform simple self-routine checks at home while enjoying Manscaped products that you use every day. I'm talking, of course, about the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It makes sense, right? We use these products daily to trim and maintain our boys down there. Well, we're talking about the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, and my dude has two interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. You got a standard one to take a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth and sleek. With dual LED spotlights, you'll achieve better visibility, making every trim more precise and hassle-free. And if you don't like making a mess, well, this is waterproof too. You can shave in the shower, in the bath, hey, even in the ocean. You can bring this trimmer wherever you go too, thanks to wireless charging and the travel lock feature. In addition to providing the right tools and solutions for comfortable and easy grooming, Manscaped is committed to raising awareness and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families that have been impacted by testicular cancer. And that's why they'll be donating $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society. Help save lives and balls by going over to manscaped.com/TCS and share their funny, educational check yourself video. While you're at it, grab 20% off and free shipping with our code MyWorld, because like a famous American philosopher once said, take care of your mentals, your balls, and your chickens. Man, proud to be associated with Manscaped. Really appreciate their support. Hope you'll check them out today. Manscaped.com/TCS. Pretty cool of them to donate $50,000. And Manscaped's been a day one sponsor for us here on the program, Jeff. If folks are looking to support our show, they should look no further than manscaped.com/TCS, right?
Yes, without question. I've got my shirt. But no, we have fun with Manscaped. They are absolutely great supporter, but this cause is kind of sets them a cut above the rest. No.
Oh, look at you.
No.
Let's jump into it. Here we are. We're at the Temple University in Philadelphia. There's about 3,500 fans that are paid here on April 19th. It's a 4,500 folks in attendance, about 1,000 comps out. And it's interesting to think that what all you had going just in the days up to this. Meltzer would write, Lashley and TNA worked out the deal only a few days before the show, and it was only for the surprise pay-per-view appearance and doing this set of first TVs. He's not even confirmed for the next set of TVs, although he'll most likely be there. And there's no talk about him as far as pay-per-view or doing any matches because no commitment is that long. It's been questioned why TNA would feature him as a big deal and start a storyline with him at the top if it was only a 3-day commitment. But Lashley's friends with both Angle and Booker T, and had always talked that he believed he could do a limited pro wrestling and a relatively short MMA career. Having spoken with him a few times about it, I was actually surprised it didn't happen sooner since he had friends there, TNA guys who were on top in WWE. And he can still work a limited schedule, doing a few TVs a month and make money to help fund his training the rest of the time. So talk to me about Lashley, how it comes together, and is the report correct here that it was only supposed to be for this pay-per-view as a surprise and the next set of tapings, and that was it?
You know what? I think it was a kind of because he had his fight career going on. And we were damn happy to get him. If I remember correctly, it started with Kurt, the relationship, but I believe Dixie and whoever was working with Bobby. I tried to think of that going through the research, but no. Great. I mean, I was elated to get him. Bobby is just such a unique individual. His military background, not just his look and to me, his charisma. And I think, this is 2009, and here we are 15 years later. And if you put a side by side of Bobby then and now, I don't think you're going to see a lot of difference.
No.
What year did him and Umaga, the truck?
I think it was 06.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't that far removed from here. So yeah, 06. But is that still the pay-per-view record? I think so.
I'm not sure. That's a good question, though.
I think it was the rest. But anyway, him being such a high-profile guy.
I guess it was 05. I guess I lied. It was 05.
But anyway, so not for that far removed, but I'm saying a high-profile wrestling, Bobby in the fight game. He checked so many boxes with Spike. We were happy to get him, and we also understood he's in a unique position because he's in real training. So we're just going to have to figure out and navigate our way through. At this stage, he had no interest in WWE, and we kind of knew we're going to have to figure out, and this will be really a step-by-step process. But damn happy to get him.
It's a big deal to land him, and we should talk about the pre-show match. We mentioned Danny Bonaduce. They go 3.5 minutes. Meltzer would say he's perfectly acceptable in his role, and the crowd was into the match as him as a heel. He's taken some big bumps and has some good timing for somebody who's only had a handful of matches. And Eric Young gets the win, 3.5 minutes. What'd you think? Did Eric like this challenge of working with a quote unquote celebrity like this?
Yes. I mean, and we've talked about different members of the TNA roster through this podcast. And I've mentioned several. Eric, to me, is about as valuable as the guy we had because there's nothing he couldn't do. Heel or babyface, opening match or main event, comedy, serious, take a celebrity like this. Eric doesn't get enough flowers, I think, in a lot of ways. And, I always go back to the conversation that my dad would have about different guys through the territory days. And, he would mention different folks and just say, hey man, sometimes they're so good, they go under the radar. Tommy Gilbert, my dad was a huge Tommy Gilbert fan, Eddie Gilbert and Doug's dad. And Tommy was my grandfather's partner for a lot of years, but Tommy, same thing. It wasn't a match on the card that he couldn't work and make not just good, but make everybody better. That was Eric for us.
Let's talk a little bit about the next match. This will be the first official match on the pay-per-view. It's Suicide. He's retaining the X title in an Escape the Cage match with Jay Lethal, Consequences Creed, Kyoshi, and Sheik Abdul Bashir. Talk to me about an Escape the Cage match. That sounds Memphis.
Oh, it's just first one out. AAA did it this way. WWE did it this way. It's the logic to me was not something that I was raised on, but I also understood, my mindset was, back in the territory days, why do you have a cage match? Keeps everybody out and keeps the heel in. It's kind of the simple logic. The cage match that come to really light in the WWF days was you could win the match by pinfall submission or escaping. That's counterintuitive, but I guess you got to beat your opponent up bad enough and incapacitate them so you can walk out. But I still felt that was somewhat of a treat move for you to basically walk off from your opponent. But that was what escaped was. The only way you could win was escape over the top of the cage.
The finish of this is really special. It comes down to Suicide and Bashir. Meltzer would say the finish was spectacular as both men climbed to the top of the cage and started punching each other in the 1970s Olympic Auditorium cage match finish. There was a suicide headbutt that Bashir took back to the ring. He was about to climb out when Kiyoshi came back and tried to stop him. Security pulled Kiyoshi off the cage. Bashir then went to exit, but Suicide did a plancha off the top of the high cage onto Kiyoshi on the security, hitting the floor for the win. The match was okay, not much heat, but the finish came off great. 2.25 stars. Man, the visual of a guy jumping off the top of the cage down to the floor, that's pretty special.
And again, these days we were on a roll ratings, not just over the last month, but just kind of the momentum build. And again, does this sound familiar? These type pay-per-views, everybody came to deliver, and they did.
Even Dixie, she's going to do her very first live interview in front of the fans here. She's going to thank the fans for the recent record-setting ratings, and Meltzer would say she didn't come off like a television character and was probably the opposite of what you'd envision a wrestling promoter as being. She was introduced as a mother of two and presented as a good person trying to build a company. What'd you think of Dixie coming out and speaking to the crowd in her presentation? Were you for her appearing in front of the crowd, and what'd you think of the presentation?
You know what? I didn't recall this being the first, but Dixie can handle herself in public. I mean, that's, she's an expert, and I'm not saying this, but that's what, as a good PR agent, you got to deliver good news and bad news, no matter what it is. So her ability to deliver a message is good.
We got to talk about the next match. It's ODB, who we all agree on this program would have been a huge star. Timing's everything, boy. Golly, she'd be rolling today. She wins a 4-way over Madison Rain, Sojo Bolt, and Daphne. Bolt's wearing a new wig here. Crowd's dead for the match, but they all love ODB's antics. Meltzer would say the working was bad here. The Torch gave it a star and a quarter. Dave was not as high on it. He gave it a dud. Man, listen, the bright spot of this is ODB, and I can't help but get kind of sad when I see old footage with Daphne. Man, just gone way too soon.
Sad. When you kind of look through, and again, hindsight 2020, and hearing the Meltzer reports and the Keller reports, and maybe a little bit different, all that. At the end of the day, there was nothing on the other channel, WWF at the time, to my knowledge, recall, to really give it comparative, so to speak. And so what Dave and his readers remember was the Kong Gale feud. And so everything was lesser than, and that was, to me, not fair, because ODB's charisma and others, Daphne's charisma, all of them, they were good. They just weren't the in-ring drama that was created by Gale and Kong.
Let's talk about Motor City Machine Guns. They're going to be out here next, and they're going to retain the IWGP Junior Tag Team titles over LAX and Team No Limit. They go 11 minutes and 49 seconds. The Observer gives it 3.25 stars. Meltzer says he's surprised the crowd isn't into Hernandez's stuff more. The finish is a double team made in Detroit, which is a double team sliced bread. Look at who's on this team, by the way. Team No Limit. NATO is on that team.
Yep.
It's a loaded deal here. Man, Motor City Machine Guns. Did they ever miss in the ring? It feels like they were ahead every time out.
That new generation of tag teams we'll go into. It's kind of one of our themes here today. Video game tag team action. Just they freaking awesome. Really, really good. And this is 15 years ago.
Next up is a crazy match. It's a Doomsday Chamber of Blood match with Matt Morgan and Abyss. Now, a Chamber of Blood, in theory, the rules are supposed to be you have to make your opponent bleed before you can pin or submit him. Therefore, putting on a submission move before he's bleeding does you no good. You got to bust that guy open first. Eventually, as you might imagine, that happens. Slick Johnson is going to be doing a run in here. Stevie Richards is going to run in. There's actually an ECW chant in 2009. And yeah, ECW exists for the WWE still on the other program, but we're chanting it here for Stevie Richards. There's thumbtacks, there's chairs, there's low blows, there's blood. My goodness. 2.5 stars in the Observer, 3/4 of a star in the Torch. Listen, I understand that, part of our deal here is we've got to find some sort of blood and guts for Abyss. I get that. But yeah, here it is. Matt Morgan pins him 12 minutes and 26 seconds. What'd you think here?
They worked their ass off. Again, when you see the pictures, this is when we had gone down the road collectively, Abyss in the white outfit.
Yes.
It wasn't the same, but certainly wasn't because of their lack of effort.
Not at all. A lot of effort in the next one too. It only gets half a star in the Observer, but Angelina Love is going to win a 3-way to take the Knockouts title from Awesome Kong. She's going to do that by pinning Taylor Wilde. So Kong is not pinned. So nicely sets up a rematch. The guys were not impressed with the work in the newsletters. They said the finish looked terrible. The high point was Kong missing a somersault splash that got a reaction, and a bigger reaction maybe than everything else on the show. I know Kong has been this dominant champion, but since Gail Kim's out of here and you can't really have those sort of ass-kicking rematches, it probably does make sense. Get the belt off of her where she didn't really lose. Now she's got a story, right?
Yeah, and tried to build opponents for her, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But ODB, Angelina Love, just there's the list of easy for me to say, the diverse knockouts, Sojo and others.
The next one got a crazy reaction. I want you to go out of your way to see this. If you're a fan of old school ECW, you're going to like when Team 3D returned to Philadelphia here, now as New Japan Tag Team Champions inside of a cage match, taking on Beer Money. 3D is super over. Nobody has the reaction they do here. They're going to brawl through the stands. Fans are going to chant ECW. We've got tables being set up and suplexes on the floor and cage doors being thrown in the face. And it's really a fun match, including a doomsday device. Yeah. 3D hits a doomsday device and the crowd is ready for tables, and they pop big when Bubba tells Devon to get the table, and the crowd starts chanting, "We want fire." Think about that. That's where we are. My goodness. Team 3D gets the win though, just under 15 minutes, 14 minutes and 59 seconds. I guess it's no surprise that 3D is this over in Philadelphia. But when you really think about this tag team division, this is the same company that has the Motor City Machine Guns. We talked about Naito and LAX, but Beer Money, a homegrown act, over like Rover, taking on the hometown favorites in the former Dudley Boys. This is just a no-brainer for pro wrestling on pay-per-view, is it not?
True. And you've said it a second ago. This is hats off to Bubba and Devon. This was so down their alley, but to have it in Philly and their opponents, Bobby and James, it was good shit, pal, as Vinnie Mac would say, or Bruce would say, or others would say. It was very entertaining. Super, super entertaining.
Next up, we've got AJ Styles teaming with Christopher Daniels and Jeff Jarrett and Samoa Joe to beat Kurt Angle, Kevin Nash, Booker T, and Scott Steiner. It's a lethal lockdown match where Kurt Angle starts with Christopher Daniels. They're going 23 minutes and 1 second. It's a big match. The Observer gives it 3 stars or 3.5. The Torch gives it 3. What do you remember about this lethal lockdown match here? A lot of talent in there.
Well, and you look at the last 2 matches, well, the last 3, but the last 2, the baby faces are AJ, Daniels, and Samoa Joe, and me and Mick. And on the other side is the Main Event Mafia. And that was the story we had been building gosh, since October. This was kind of where we charted our course, that we were going to put the main event mafia together. The front line was going to come together. Me and Mick were going to be in this quandary of trying to do the best for the promotion. And of course, the main event mafia getting out of bands, but this is what we had built for. And the blow off, again, this was a 6-month blow off because, not to jump too far ahead, but in this one, they weren't sure, is Jeff really going to stick with these guys? And the finish at the very end brought in a question: am I going to hit Booker or I'm going to hit AJ? And I cracked Booker and AJ and go on to win. And it was just, it's exactly what we had been building for.
Meltzer had an interesting write-up about this I want to read to you, because I found some of it to be, well, we'll just go with interesting. I want to remind everybody, Steiner used a Frankensteiner off the top on AJ Styles, and the place came unglued. Joe would come in, and this is according to Dave Meltzer, he wasn't over a bit. Nash came out, and he was over, but couldn't do much. Finally, JArrett came in, and the crowd didn't care about him a bit. The top of the cage came down with all the weapons, and it became a weapons match. And there was a spot where JArrett went to hit Booker with a garbage can, but he moved, and JArrett hit Styles, teasing the finish. The finish started when Angle climbed to the roof of the cage and Styles followed. They brawled on the edge, each teasing, falling off and dying. We're teasing death here, including Angle suplexing him off the top of the cage. Angle got back in the ring, falling, holding himself on the top and letting go, and he could have easily blown out his knees. Styles jumped off a raised portion of the roof onto the roof of the cage that was gimmicked, and then he went through and fell on everyone. That was crazy. Meltzer would say the crowd didn't care about any of this storyline stuff, only when stars entered and people put their health at risk. And I know that has become a thing, you know, whether we as wrestling fans or an internet wrestling community want to acknowledge it, but there is this weird thing in all of us that we react when we think there's going to be potential injury, but that level of risk is probably not something you want to get too comfortable with if you're going to have a long career. Talk to me about that, Jeff. You've managed to be one of those rare guys who's been in the business forever, not had any surgeries, but you've been selective on where you've taken risks. But when you're trying to super serve the crowd and you're looking for pops and reactions, it's a slippery slope at times, no?
And I've got a ton of respect for guys that maybe go above and beyond and take those kind of risk. But again, I think at times taking the crazy bump, high risk now, like I think Mick Foley, I'll just use it. It's the first one that comes to my mind. Fell off Hell in the Cell, a calculated risk, and he got carted out, but came back and you know, the carting out, he wove that into a story. So crazy bump, but it was a part of the story. The thing that I'm thinking through now, Conrad, as you say that, is that to take a high risk move for the sake of taking a high risk move, I think you're shortchanging yourself, or maybe taking a shortcut yourself and not really maximizing charisma, promos, storytelling, drama that you can build into the match without doing those. I get it. There's a balance out there, but at the end of the day, thank the Lord that I've had this viewpoint that was ingrained into me. People remember the moments of the emotional attachment, a promo, a 1, 2, 3. Yes, they kind of care how you got there. They do, but they don't. But they remember the emotional attachment as opposed to the guitar solo. I just, you know, that they want to remember the hook of the song or whatever it may be. There's so many different analogies you could bring together, but man, it's a slippery slope, Conrad, because injuries can happen, as we all know, in an instant, and then you're on the shelf for months at a time.
Taz did not appear on the pay-per-view. When Samoa Joe comes out and he's wearing a towel over his head like Taz, a lot of people think that must be a tease. Maybe they're going to put Taz in the mentor role. But really, we've tried that 3 times with Samoa Joe, if you count Taz. We tried it once with Marcus Davis and once with Kevin Nash. And Meltzer would say Taz no doubt would have gotten a big reaction in Philadelphia, but there was a clause in his contract with WWE that even with it being expired and him being a free agent, that because he was an announcer, he has a certain period of time before he can appear on a rival group's television show. Is that the way you remember this? You wanted to use Taz here in Philly, but just couldn't?
I think it was too premature. I think that was the narrative that the sheets wrote. I think we were well aware of that, because when did Taz start at TNA?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit down the line, quite a bit down the line.
I just find that fascinating that he didn't debut here. Like, maybe it had to be the contract. I'm not sure, but
yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the main event. It's for the world title. Mick Foley is going to pin Sting in 15 minutes and 55 seconds to win the title. And it was announced that you could win by pin, submission, or escaping the cage. At no point on television was any of this advertised, according to Dave. Both are getting a mixed reaction. Foley's punching himself over and over, opening up a pre-existing cut. He's bleeding heavily before the match even starts over the right eye. And the crowd is booing Foley when he's using the Scorpion Deathlock on Sting, like he's stealing the other guy's move. It's really a fun match, and it's a big highlight for Mick Foley to win the world title one last time in an era where I don't think a lot of people would have maybe considered it. Was this always the plan? Did the plans change because the Mafia got hot? Did it change when you found out Foley was writing a book and you thought, man, this will be a nice piece of PR and really add to the book? Or just talk me through this.
It was kind of a chartered course. I don't want to say we decided it in October, but he was writing the book and fairy tale ending and just the whole kind of everybody rolling in the same direction. It was, the blow off in multiple ways. The book, the pay-per-view, that story again, now Mick's and now Sting's without the title opens up I'll call it the main event Mafia, the next it gave more abilities when Sting's the champion. You have to focus on that, the possibilities. It was the charted course we set on.
There was a response when he won. As a reminder, this is in Philadelphia. I think most people, myself included, would have assumed the crowd would have went bananas for Foley here. Why do you think that he didn't get the explosive reaction?
2 reasons. They followed a tag match that absolutely tore the house down.
Yeah,
with 3D, and then a weapons 25-minute cage match with
all the star power in the world,
all those guys in there, and you follow it with a single. It's just, it's tough. I mean, Dynasty, Swerve and Joe did a fantastic job. It's just freaking hard. It is what it is. I think that's one thing, but I think that sits above all of it. Sting was positioned and forever will be. You can't make Sting. He'll never be the true heel. He just wasn't from day one. We didn't cast him as that. And I think that plays into it as well. Mick not beating a pure heel. There was some Sting fans still in the house that probably went, I wanted my guy Sting to win. I think those are the 2 factors.
When it was all said and done, do you think Mick was disappointed?
No, I think a seasoned guy who really, really understands the business, understands, yes, it's important to have a great reaction in the house, but it's not the end all be all, because there can be so many factors. I mean, a ref can be early or late on a count once or twice during the match. And Conrad, you'd be surprised how it can throw off kind of the rhythm and the build of a match. There can be a fight can break out in the crowd, or lights. I mean, there's 1,000 things that can just kind of throw off the live crowd reaction.
Well, I'll tell you what is always going to throw people off. When I tell them in 2024 that I can save them a boatload of money, don't just take my word for it. Cruise over right now to savewithconrad.com or check out conradreviews.com. That's where you'll see this 5-star review that came in just this past Friday evening from Jason E. He gave us 5 stars and he said, "This is one of the best decisions I've made in a long time. Not only was I able to save around $1,500 a month, I got to experience the best team in the business. Each interaction with Larry and the team was an absolute great experience. I cannot thank them enough for all they've done for me and my family. And also thanks to Francis for all the laughs and your hard work. If anyone is even considering a mortgage or looking to eliminate debt, this is the place to go. You will not be disappointed. My man Jason saved $1,500 a month. He didn't save $1,500 one time. He saved it each and every month, all because he spent 10 minutes with us at savewithconrad.com. And if you've got credit card debt or a personal loan or car loans or a second mortgage, or even worse, a home equity line of credit, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com. We're routinely helping our podcast listeners take their 30-year loan, combine it with all of their credit card debt to get a much lower monthly payment, and at the same time take their term from 30 years to 15 years. I know what you're thinking. Pay my house off faster with cheaper monthly payments? That sounds too good to be true. It's not. We're doing it routinely for our podcast listeners. I'd love to have my family help your family at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And we want to be your mortgage advisor for life. So we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. So the next time you're thinking about saving money, think about your friend in the mortgage business. That's me at savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 32416. By the way, my email address is conrad@savewithconrad.com, or you can call me toll free at 888-425-0105, or just get a quick quote, even talk to a live person right now at savewithconrad.com. And next week, Jeff, we're finally going to be talking about one of your heroes. It's going to be our 3rd year, our 3-year anniversary.
Wow.
Show. We're going to celebrate it here, talking about Jerry the King Lawler.
Oh,
when we talk about some of your all-time favorites, we talk about Randy Savage, and next week we're going to talk about Jerry the King Lawler. I don't know that we'll be able to fit all the high praise and all the lessons that you learned. We can't do that inside of one episode, but we're going to do our best next week. I mean, we could do an episode a week until the end of the year and not finish on Jerry Lawler, right?
Pal, we're going to have to figure out how to really get the stuff, the my world, peel the layers of the onion back. No, that's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it really, I'll tell you about the time I cut his yard and had to go apologize to him on another time. And maybe, some card playing, maybe some of his artwork we can talk about. No, there's
hypothetically, Jeff, I know you don't, it's rare that Jeff Jarrett gets a new car. Can we agree on that?
Very rare.
But on the off chance, if today were the day that you were going to get a brand new car, I don't mean like new to you. I mean, right off the lot, 2024, got less than 10 miles on it, got that new car smell. If you were cruising around Memphis, Jerry Lawler went to get in and he had a tray full of food, what would you say to him?
Not today. As you sit there, do you just ballpark? Because everybody's different, but I'm older than you. Do you know off the top of your head how many new cars you've bought?
2.
Okay. Guess what?
What?
I got you beat by 1.
You got 3?
No.
1. You got 1.
It's the 88 Cadillac white Brougham.
The
one and only, I think, because Elise doesn't count.
Oh, if Elise doesn't count, then I'm at 0.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I leased 2 cars that were brand new. But yeah, as a rule of thumb, everything I buy is 3, 4, 5 years old and got 9,000 miles on it.
Me too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. How about that? Didn't know about you, pal.
Well, I'll tell you what, you do enough, you look at enough credit reports for other people. And you see where money goes, and you see why they're coming to you, and what they're talking about, what they need saving. And I'm like, they're upside down in their cars.
When's the first credit report you looked at, not of your own, of somebody else's?
2001.
Okay.
I was 20.
Okay. So, but I got the education maybe a few years younger, but kind of the same education from my grandmother and my dad. Then my dad got away for it and conned me into doing the lease and the new white car. But my grandmother, from day one, that was her. She's like, you will blow more money on that damn new car for nothing.
Yeah, my wife never got the memo, so she's always buried. I mean, you know what she drives now, and I put 50 grand down on that thing. She's still upside down.
All right, Connie, we got to get out of here. You got a day to go. I love, you know what, these kind of episodes at the top of it when we went off in the rabbit hole.
That was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. All right, bud, I'm headed to Triple Mania. Woohoo.
Triple Mania is happening this weekend, but before we get there, tomorrow night, Dynamite is live. And of course, Rampage and Collision this weekend. But more importantly, see The Last Outlaw, south of the border, Triple Mania on deck. We'll be back next week talking all things Jerry Lawler. Keep up with us on YouTube at myworldpod.com. That's myworldpod.com. And be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notifications bell. We're going to be going live in the month of May, and you don't want to miss it. And if you've got a question for Jerry Lawler, just keep an eye on our social media platforms. We've got we're going to be soliciting questions at MyWorldPod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you're looking to advertise, man, there's no better place to find men 25 to 54 than right here. Find out how affordable it is at advertisewithjarrett.com. Be sure to pick up some swag at boxofgimmicks.com. We got a little something for everybody there, and we'll be back next week talking all things Jerry Lawler right here on My World.
Peace.